Hi everyone, my name is Pa Lor and I'm the Financial Coaching Coordinator here at Twin Cities Habitat. Today we'll be talking about understanding your debt-to-income ratio or DTI, what it is, why it's important, and how to calculate it. So when you're purchasing a home, it's important to know what your debt-to-income ratio is, or your DTI, as you'll commonly hear it referred to as. Before we talk about DTIs and calculating your ratios, it's important to understand what is a DTI and why it's important. So debt to income is one of the measurements used by a lender to measure your ability to manage your monthly payments and your ability to repay debt. It's a measure of the total monthly debt obligations you have divided by your total monthly gross income. So debt over income, that gives you that DTI ratio. The lower that ratio is, the better it is for you. That means that less of your income is going towards the repayment of debts. So in a sense, just means that you have income for personal expenses, living expenses, and emergencies, so your income's not as tied up in the repayment of debts. So we're talking about debts. It's important, and I want to take some time to talk about what is debt and what is considered debt. So debt is money that's owed by one party, usually the borrower, to a second party, the lender or the creditor. Loan payments are an obvious one. A lot of people, when they think about debt, they think about any loans that they have. But I want to also remind you that credit card balances are also debt. This is one that people don't really readily think about when they're thinking about debt. So whether you pay your credit balances in full every month or make just a partial payment or a minimum payment on your credit card balances, anything that you charge on a credit card is technically considered debt. And most people forget this and don't include it when they're calculating their monthly debt-to-income ratio. So if you're not sure what loans or credit card payments you have currently and what's all of those accounts are, it's important to review your credit report and see what you currently owe and what those monthly payments are. So you can get a copy of that credit report by going to annualcreditreport.com. You can request a free copy from each of the credit bureaus once every 12 months. So that's a great resource to go to get a free copy and review that credit report for all of those debt accounts. And then just a quick side note, if you see any errors on your reports, it's important to get them disputed and resolved right away, because right now they're being reported under your name and your report, and so anything on there, even if it's positive or negative, if it's incorrect, it's still impacting you and it's still affecting you. So I want to give you guys a general idea of walking through an example of calculating debt to income, so that you can kind of understand it a little bit better. So let's say that I have an auto loan that's about $300 a month. I also have 2 credit cards with $25 minimum payments that I need to make every month. So that's a total about $50. So for credit cards, we want to look at the minimum payments, because that's what I'm obligated to pay by the creditor. I might have a $1,000 balance on there, but in the eyes of the creditor, as long as I make that minimum payment, the credit card company has considered that I've made my payment for that month. So credit cards are just a little unique in that way. It's always better to pay off that balance in full, or as much of it as you can, but you're obligated to pay that minimum in order to have been considered that you made your payment. So moving on, say I also have a student loan of $150 a month. So when we add all of that debt that I have, ends up to be about $500 a month. So again, remember, debt to income is total debt over gross monthly income. So we've got $500 total debt that I owe, divided by, let's say my monthly gross income is $3,500. So 500 divided by 3,500, I get about 14.3% as my debt to income ratio. So generally, 43% is the highest ratio a borrower can have and still be qualified for a mortgage. So keep in mind this 43% is all debts, including what your housing payment would be. So including that payment that you're making for that mortgage. So for example, our subsidiary Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity Lending Inc. qualifies individuals for a mortgage of 30% of their gross monthly income. So if 43% is the highest ratio a borrower can have, and 30% is their income that's being calculated for the loan, that leaves us with about 13% as the maximum DTI that a borrower can have to qualify for a mortgage with TCHFH lending. So based on my example of my debt to income ratio that we calculated out, I was at about 14.3%. So I wouldn't qualify for a mortgage with Habitat Lending Inc. because I'm over that ratio. My debt to income is over that 13% ratio, so I would have more than the 43% debt if I were to get a mortgage with Habitat. So what can I do? I would have to find ways to reduce that debt to income. Just like your credit score, your debt to income will fluctuate over time, and it only captures a ratio at a specific point in time. So my debt to income ratio will adjust if I pay off some debt or if my income increases, because those are the two components in our calculation. So let's say that I pay off all my credit cards and now I only have my auto loan of about $300 and my student loan of about $150 a month, and my income stays the same. So now when we calculate out my debt to income, I'm at about 12.85%. So I'm below that 13%, but I'm really close. So if there were any fluctuations in my income, because we're looking at debt over income, if my income goes down, let's say that the hours at my job aren't always steady. So maybe we're doing this calculation based off of $3,500 for gross monthly income, but if my income went down to $3,000, my debt to income would increase because I'm having less income to absorb that same amount of debt. So your debt to income ratio can fluctuate depending on your income. If it fluctuates a lot, that's something that you want to pay attention to and make sure that you're giving yourself enough room and keeping that debt to income as low as possible, so you're not jeopardizing yourself and your ability to qualify for a mortgage loan. As a recap, debt to income or DTI ratio is just as important as your credit score when you're looking to qualify for a mortgage loan. It measures your monthly income that's going towards the payment of debts that you owe. So the lower your debt to income, the better it is. And it's really susceptible to changes in your income, or if you take on any additional debt, even just small amounts can affect that debt to income ratio. So to lower that debt to income ratio, either lower your monthly debt obligations or increase your income, or sometimes you might need both things to happen to get that ratio to be where it needs to be to qualify. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and visit our website at home.tchabitat.org for more first-time homebuyer tips.